The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Andre Carter's office, casting long shadows across the polished oak desk where he sat reviewing the final contract papers. His eyes were tired but focused, scanning each page with the careful attention that had become his trademark over 20 years of building his company. Next-Gen Solutions, from a startup in his garage to one of the most promising tech firms in the country. Andre glanced at his watch, an old, modest timepiece that had belonged to his father. It was a reminder of where he came from, a humble neighborhood where dreams like his were often dismissed. As one of the few black executives in the tech industry, Andre had grown accustomed to being underestimated, to walking into rooms where he was the only person who looked like him, to having to work twice as hard for half the recognition. But all of that was about to change, Dad. Are you ready? Andre looked up to see his daughter Kira standing in the doorway, her backpack slung over one shoulder. At 17, she was already showing the same sharp mind and quiet determination that had carried him through countless obstacles. Her interest in computer engineering had blossomed early, and she'd recently developed an algorithm that had caught the attention of several tech publications. Almost, Andre replied, smiling as he gathered the papers into a leather portfolio. Nervous? Kira shrugged, but he could see the excitement in her eyes. A little. It's not every day you sit in on a $750 million deal. $750 million, Andre corrected gently. And I want you there because someday this could all be yours if you want it. This wasn't just any deal. After years of innovation and growth, NextGen had created a revolutionary data security system that had the potential to transform how companies protected their information. The Blackwell family, owners of Blackwell Investments, one of the largest private equity firms in the world, had taken notice. Their offer of $750 million to acquire NextGen had come after months of negotiations, meetings, and due diligence, Mr. Carter. His assistant Lee appeared behind Kira. Your car is waiting downstairs. Andre nodded, standing to pull on his suit jacket. It fit perfectly. Tailored, like the image he had carefully crafted for himself in an industry that had initially been reluctant to make space for him. He'd learned early that in rooms where people questioned his belonging, appearance mattered. Remember, he said to Kira as they walked toward the elevator, this week isn't just about business. It's about seeing if these people are the right fit to carry forward what we've built here. Kira nodded, understanding the weight behind her father's words. NextGen wasn't just a company, it was a legacy, a testament to what could be accomplished through perseverance, and a door opener for others who would come after them. The sleek company car whisked them through midday traffic toward Blackwell Tower, a gleaming glass skyscraper that dominated the city skyline. As they pulled up to the entrance, Andre took a deep breath, centering himself before the most important meeting of his career. The lobby of Blackwell Tower was a cathedral to wealth, marble floors, soaring ceilings, and a massive art installation that probably cost more than Andre's first office building. A receptionist with a practiced smile directed them to a private elevator that would take them directly to the top floor. Impressive, Kira murmured as the elevator climbed smoothly upward, the city shrinking beneath them. Remember, it's all just for show, Andre replied quietly. Buildings don't make deals. People do. The elevator doors opened to reveal Thomas Blackwell, the patriarch of the Blackwell family, waiting to greet them personally. In his 70s now, Thomas still cut an imposing figure, tall, silver-haired, with the confident ease that came from a lifetime of wielding influence. Andre. Right on time, Thomas extended his hand. And this must be the daughter I've heard so much about. Kira Carter, she introduced herself, her handshake firm and confident, just as her father had taught her. A pleasure, Thomas said, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes as they flicked over her briefly. Come, everyone's waiting in the conference room. They followed him down a hallway lined with photographs of the Blackwell family through generations, always in positions of power, always surrounded by signs of wealth and success. Andre noted that in the entire history displayed on these walls, there wasn't a single face that looked like his or Kira's. The conference room was filled with people when they entered. Lawyers, financial advisors, and several members of the Blackwell family. Thomas's sons, Reed and Preston, sat near the head of the table, both in expensive suits that looked like they'd never seen a wrinkle. Thomas's wife Vivian sat nearby, her jewelry catching the light every time she moved. Everyone, this is Andre Carter and his daughter Kira, Thomas announced. Let's make them feel welcome. After all, we're about to become family in a way, aren't we? There were polite laughs and nods around the table. Andre had met most of them before during previous negotiations, but he noticed several curious glances directed at Kira. He had mentioned bringing her, but he could read the surprise on some faces clearly. They hadn't expected him to actually do it. Andre, why don't you sit here? Thomas indicated a chair near him. And Kira can sit? He glanced around as if just realizing there might not be space for her. Right next to her father, of course, Vivian interjected smoothly, gesturing to an aide who quickly brought another chair. As they settled in, the initial presentations began. Financial projections, integration plans, and market analyses flashed across the large screen at the end of the room. Andre watched carefully, occasionally making notes, while Kira observed everything with keen interest. During a brief break, Preston Blackwell approached them, drink in hand. So, Kira, your father tells me you're interested in the family business. Most girls your age are more interested in social media than software engineering, aren't they? His tone was conversational, but Andre felt a familiar tension creep into his shoulders. Kira smiled politely. Actually, I've developed an encryption algorithm that improves on the current industry standard by about 30%. I could explain how it works if you're interested. Preston looked momentarily taken aback. Well, that's impressive. You must get your brains from your dad here. And my mom, Kira added. She was a systems architect before she passed away. An awkward silence followed, broken when Thomas called everyone back to the table. As the day wore on, Andre found himself increasingly aware of the subtle undercurrents in the room. The way Reed Blackwell directed his questions only to the white executives from NextGen. The slight surprise that flickered across faces whenever Andre or one of his team members demonstrated deep technical knowledge. These were familiar patterns to Andre, small paper cuts he'd endured throughout his career. By late afternoon, when the preliminary agreements were signed and handshakes exchanged, Andre felt a mix of triumph and unease. Tomorrow they would meet again for the final signatures, followed by a celebratory dinner at the Blackwells' estate. Back in the car, Kira was quieter than usual. What did you think? Andre asked. She considered for a moment before answering. They're exactly what I expected. Andre raised an eyebrow. And what's that? People who've never had to wonder if they belong in a room? She turned to look at him. Are you sure about this, Dad? About selling to them? It was a question Andre had asked himself countless times over the past months. The money would secure their future, allow him to fund scholarships and programs for kids who looked like him, who came from neighborhoods like his. It would be a victory, proof that he had succeeded by any measure. And yet, that's why I wanted you there, he said finally. I wanted you to see them, to help me decide if they're worthy of what we've built. Kira nodded, understanding the trust he was placing in her judgment. One more day, Andre said, looking out at the city as they drove home. One more day, and then we make our decision. What neither of them knew was that the dinner at the Blackwell estate would change everything, not just for them, but for the Blackwell family and the entire deal that hung in the balance. The Blackwell estate sprawled across 30 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, a monument to old money and privilege. As the car carrying Andre and Kira rolled through the ornate iron gates, Kira pressed her face to the window, taking in the marble fountains and carefully trimmed hedges. It looks like something out of a movie, she whispered. Andre adjusted his tie, a nervous habit from his early days of business meetings when he felt out of place. Remember, it's just a house. Very big, very expensive, but still just a house. The driver pulled up to the entrance where a butler in a crisp uniform waited to greet them. The evening air was cool and carried the scent of flowers as they stepped out. Andre placed a gentle hand on Kira's shoulder, a silent reminder that they were in this together. Mr. Carter, Miss Carter? The butler nodded. The Blackwells are waiting in the main hall. They followed him through massive double doors into an entrance hall with a ceiling that soared 2 stories high. A chandelier that looked like it belonged in a European palace cast a warm glow over marble floors and antique furniture that probably cost more than most people's homes. Thomas Blackwell strode forward to meet them, dressed in what he probably considered casual attire. Tailored slacks and a cashmere sweater that likely cost more than most people's monthly rent. Andre, Kira, welcome to our humble home, he said, His arms spread wide in a gesture that was anything but humble. His wife Vivian appeared beside him in an elegant dress, diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. "So glad you could join us," Vivian said, her smile polite but distant. "We thought it would be nice to celebrate in a more personal setting." Andre nodded, matching her polite tone. "We appreciate the invitation." More introductions followed as other dinner guests emerged from adjoining rooms. The Blackwell's sons, Reed and Preston, were there with their wives. A few board members from Blackwell Investments had been invited as well, along with their spouses. Andre recognized most of them from previous meetings, though several looked surprised to see Kira. "We don't often have young people at these gatherings," Vivian commented as she led them through to a sitting room where drinks were being served. "It's refreshing." Andre noticed that Kira was the only person of color besides himself in the entire gathering. It wasn't surprising. He'd been the only one in rooms like this for most of his career, but he felt a familiar protectiveness rise in his chest. "Kira has been instrumental in developing some of our key technologies," Andre explained. "I couldn't sign away the company without her input." Thomas raised his eyebrows slightly. "Sign away?" "I prefer to think of it as entrusting to capable hands. Speaking of which," he gestured to a server who approached with a tray of champagne flutes. "I think a toast is in order." Everyone accepted a glass, including Kira, though Andre noticed hers contained sparkling water rather than champagne, a small courtesy he appreciated. "To new partnerships," Thomas declared, raising his glass. "And to Andre Carter, who built something truly remarkable." Glasses clinked, and Andre nodded in acknowledgement of the toast, though he couldn't help noticing that Thomas spoke of him in the past tense, as if his role in Next Gen's story was already complete. Dinner was announced, and they moved to a dining room dominated by a table that could easily seat 20. Crystal gleamed under the light of another chandelier, and the china plates probably cost more than Andre's first computer. The seating arrangement separated Andre from Kira. He was placed near Thomas at the head of the table, while Kira was seated between Preston and his wife Claire at the far end. Andre caught Kira's eye and gave her a reassuring nod. She was more than capable of handling herself. As the first course was served, some kind of delicate seafood creation, conversation flowed around business, politics, and the usual topics of the wealthy and powerful. Andre participated easily, having learned long ago how to navigate these waters, but he kept one eye on Kira. Preston seemed to be peppering her with questions, leaning in a bit too close for Andre's comfort. But Kira held her own, her back straight, her responses measured and intelligent. Pride swelled in his chest. She was so much like her mother. Brilliant, resilient, unintimidated. "So, Andre," Thomas said, drawing his attention back, "once the paperwork is signed tomorrow, what are your plans? Will you stay on during the transition, or are you eager to start enjoying your new wealth?" There was something in his tone that suggested he already knew the answer. "I'm committed to ensuring a smooth transition," Andre replied carefully. "NextGen is more than just a business to me. It's a community of people who've worked incredibly hard to get us where we are." Thomas nodded, though his eyes held a glint that Andre couldn't quite read. Of course, loyalty, important quality." He took a sip of his wine. "Though sometimes, Andre, when opportunities like this come along, it's best to simply take the money and enjoy it. Let the experts handle the business going forward." Before Andre could respond, a burst of laughter came from the other end of the table. He glanced down to see Preston leaning back in his chair, clearly amused by something. "You're telling me," Preston was saying to Kira, loud enough for several nearby diners to hear, "that you actually wrote the code yourself? No help from the professionals at Daddy's company?" Andre couldn't hear Kira's response, but he could see the controlled expression on her face, the one she wore when she was working hard to maintain her composure. "I just find it hard to believe," Preston continued, his voice carrying further now as other conversations quieted. "I mean, no offense, but most kids your age are busy with TikTok or whatever, not creating complex algorithms." "Perhaps your imagination is limited by your experience," Kira responded, her voice calm but firm. A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the table. Preston's wife touched his arm, a silent suggestion to back off, but he shrugged her away. "Oh, come on, I'm just saying it's unusual. I mean, how many girls from your background end up in tech? It's a compliment, really." Preston's tone suggested he thought he was being generous. Andre started to rise from his seat, but Thomas placed a hand on his arm. Just good-natured banter, Thomas murmured. Preston doesn't mean anything by it. But Andre could see the tension in his daughter's shoulders, the slight clench of her jaw. He knew that look. He'd worn it himself countless times when forced to smile through thinly veiled prejudice. "If you'll excuse me," Kira said suddenly, standing from her seat. "I need to use the restroom." Down the hall to the left, Vivian directed with a tight smile. As Kira left the room, Andre noticed Preston leaning toward his brother Reed, whispering something that made them both snicker. He couldn't hear what was said, but the body language was clear enough. "I should check on my daughter," Andre said, placing his napkin beside his plate. "Nonsense." Thomas waved dismissively. "She's just gone to the powder room." Girls that age can be so sensitive. Now about the integration timeline. But Andre was already pushing back his chair, a quiet determination in his movements. "Excuse me for a moment." He walked purposefully toward the hallway Kira had taken. As he approached the corridor, he heard voices. Preston and Reed had apparently left the table as well and were standing just around the corner, their backs to him. "Can you believe he brought her? Like this is bring your daughter to work day or something," Preston was saying, his voice low but clear in the quiet hallway. "Did you see her face when you questioned her about the code?" Reed laughed. "As if someone like her could actually understand that level of programming. Daddy probably hired someone to teach her a few lines so she could pretend. Well, that's what these people do, right? Everything's about appearance." Andre Carter, the great black tech genius, and his prodigy daughter. Makes for a nice story in Forbes, but we all know who's going to be running things once we sign those papers. Andre stood frozen, heat rising from his collar to his face. 20 years of fighting for respect, of proving himself over and over, of building something meaningful. And this was still how they saw him. How they saw his brilliant daughter. "I wonder how long Daddy's going to stick around after we write that check," Preston continued. "I give it 6 months before he's living it up in some mansion, leaving us to fix whatever diversity hire mess he's created at that company." Andre's hands curled into fists at his sides, but before he could step forward, he heard the bathroom door open further down the hall. Kira emerged, her face composed but her eyes telling a different story. She'd been crying. Preston and Reed fell silent as they spotted her. Awkward smiles pasted on their faces. "Oh, hey," Preston said, his voice suddenly friendly. "We were just coming to see if you got lost." Kira looked at them, then past them to where her father stood. Their eyes met, and in that moment something passed between them. A silent understanding. A shared experience, a decision. Andre stepped forward, his voice steady despite the anger burning in his chest. "Kira," he said quietly, "I think it's time we went home." The dining room fell silent as Andre and Kira re-entered. Every eye turned toward them, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Andre's face was composed, but there was a coldness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Kira walked beside her father, her chin lifted slightly higher, her back a little straighter. Preston and Reed followed a few steps behind, exchanging glances. Something had changed, and they knew it. "Is everything all right?" Thomas asked, his eyebrows raised in mild concern as Andre approached the table. "We were just about to serve the main course." Andre placed his hands on the back of his chair, his fingers gripping the fine upholstery. "Thomas, I want to thank you for your hospitality this evening, but I'm afraid Kira and I will be leaving." Murmurs rippled around the table. Vivian's smile froze on her face. Thomas set down his wine glass carefully. "Leaving? But we haven't even discussed the final details for tomorrow's signing." Thomas's voice remained pleasant, but there was a new edge to it. Andre looked around the table, taking in the confused faces, the nervous glances. The weight of the moment settled on his shoulders. A familiar weight. The weight of standing up, of walking away from money and opportunity because some things mattered more. "I overheard an interesting conversation in the hallway just now," Andre said, his voice steady and calm. "Your sons have some colorful opinions about me and my daughter." Preston's face paled slightly. Reed became suddenly interested in his dinner roll. "Oh?" Thomas's eyes darted to his sons, then back to Andre. "I'm sure it was just idle chatter. Boys will be boys, you know how it is." "No, I don't know how it is," Andre replied, the first hint of anger seeping into his voice. "When my daughter creates breakthrough encryption algorithms at 17, she's not dismissed as just a girl. When I build a company valued at $750 million, It's not dismissed as just appearances. Kira placed her hand on her father's arm, a gesture of support. She turned to Preston, her voice clear and unwavering. You asked if I really wrote the code myself. The answer is yes, I did. I also debugged it, tested it against industry standards, and improved it through 3 iterations. Would you like me to explain the mathematical principles behind it? Or would that confuse you? Preston's mouth opened and closed without sound. Claire, his wife, stared down at her plate, clearly mortified. Now hold on, Thomas said, rising from his seat. This is all a misunderstanding. Whatever you think you heard, I heard exactly what your son said, Andre cut in. About me, about my daughter, about my company and the people who work there, and it told me everything I need to know about how you view this partnership. Thomas's face hardened. The mask of geniality slipped, revealing the ruthless businessman beneath. Andre, let's be reasonable. This is a $750 million deal. Are you really going to walk away because of some thoughtless comments? Business is business. Personal feelings shouldn't enter into it. Andre looked at Thomas for a long moment. 20 years ago, he might have swallowed his pride, might have convinced himself that the money was worth the disrespect. But he wasn't that young man anymore. That's where you're wrong, Thomas. Business is always personal. Every decision I've made building NextGen was personal. The people I hired, the culture we created, the values we stand for. All personal choices that built something valuable. Something you want to buy. Andre loosened his tie slightly, feeling more comfortable than he had all evening. But the deal isn't just about the money. It's about entrusting what we've built to people who will respect it. And after tonight, I'm not convinced you're those people. Vivian leaned forward, her diamond earrings catching the light. Andre, surely we can discuss this like adults. Whatever my son said, and I'm sure they're very sorry. She shot a pointed look at Preston and Reed. It doesn't reflect the official position of Blackwell Investments. Andre almost laughed. The official position? Tell me, Vivian, when does prejudice become official? Is it only when it's written in company policy? Or does it count when it's whispered in hallways? An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. One of the board members cleared his throat. A server who had been about to enter with a tray of food hovered uncertainly in the doorway. I think you're overreacting, Thomas said finally, his voice colder now. This kind of sensitivity isn't conducive to business at this level. Andre nodded slowly as if Thomas had just proven his point. Then I guess we operate at different levels. He turned to Kira. Ready to go? Kira nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of emotions. Hurt, pride, resolution. Wait. Reed suddenly spoke up, his voice tight with panic. He turned to his father. Dad, we can't lose this deal. The board meeting next week, we promised them this acquisition. The stock options. Thomas silenced him with a sharp gesture, but it was too late. Andre caught the flash of alarm in Thomas's eyes before it was quickly masked. Is there something I should know about your company's financial situation, Thomas? Andre asked quietly. Our finances are none of your concern, Thomas snapped, then immediately composed himself. Andre, please. Let's not be hasty. We can revisit the terms, perhaps adjust the offer. You mean you could pay me more to ignore how you really feel? Andre shook his head. There isn't enough money for that. Thomas's face flushed with anger. You're making a mistake. A very expensive mistake. No, Andre said with certainty. For the first time tonight, I'm sure I'm making the right decision. He placed his hand on Kira's shoulder. My daughter and I are leaving now. I'll have my lawyers contact yours tomorrow to formally terminate our negotiations. As they turned to leave, Preston suddenly stood. You can't do this. Do you have any idea who we are? Who my father is. Andre paused, looking back at the table of wealthy, powerful people, who suddenly seemed smaller than they had when he arrived. I know exactly who you are. That's the problem. With dignity and purpose, Andre and Kira walked out of the dining room, through the grand entrance hall, and into the cool night air. Neither spoke until they reached their waiting car. As the driver pulled away from the Blackwell estate, Kira finally broke the silence. Dad, that was $750 million. Andre exhaled slowly, the tension of the evening beginning to leave his body. Yes, it was. Are you okay with walking away from that much money? Andre thought about the question. About the years of hard work, the sacrifices, the dream of a big payday. Then he thought about the look on his daughter's face when she'd emerged from the bathroom, trying so hard to be strong despite the cruel words she'd heard. There are different kinds of wealth, Kira. he said finally, and some things you can't put a price on. Kira leaned her head against her father's shoulder, something she hadn't done since she was much younger. What happens now? Andre looked out the window at the city lights glowing in the distance. For the first time that evening, he smiled, a genuine smile full of possibility. Now we go home, get some rest, and tomorrow we build something even better. Back at the Blackwell estate, the dinner party had dissolved into chaos. Thomas was shouting into his phone, trying to reach his lawyers. Preston and Reed were arguing loudly about whose fault it was. Vivian sat silent, twisting her diamond bracelet around her wrist. And in the background, servers cleared away untouched plates of expensive food from the table, where a deal worth $750 million had just collapsed in less than 5 minutes. None of them yet realized that by morning, the real fallout was only beginning. Andre woke before his alarm the next morning. For a moment he lay still, the events of the previous night washing over him, the Blackwell estate, the dinner, the overheard conversation, walking away from $750 million. It felt almost like a dream, but the quiet certainty in his chest told him he'd made the right choice. His phone, placed on the nightstand, had been buzzing steadily since 5 a.m. He'd silenced it after the third call. Now as sunlight streamed through the blinds, he finally reached for it. 37 missed calls, 22 voicemails, over 50 text messages. News traveled fast in the business world. Downstairs, he found Kira already at the kitchen island, laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. She looked up as he entered, a half-eaten piece of toast beside her. "Morning," she said, watching him carefully. "Sleep okay?" Andre smiled. "Better than I expected." He poured himself a cup of coffee from the pot she'd already made. "You?" "I kept thinking about Preston's face when you said we were leaving." A small, satisfied smile played across her lips. "Worth every penny we walked away from." Andre chuckled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Speaking of which, I should probably start returning some of these calls." He held up his phone. "Starting with our lawyers." Kira nodded toward her laptop. "You might want to check the news first." Andre came around the island to look over her shoulder. On the screen was a financial news website. The headline, bold and unmistakable: "Breaking, next-gen Blackwell deal collapses. Blackwell Investment stock plunges 15% in pre-market trading." 15%? Andre whispered, scanning the article quickly. The story was light on details, simply reporting that sources close to the negotiations confirmed the deal had fallen through unexpectedly. "That's not all," Kira said, switching to another tab. This one showed the business section of a major newspaper. The headline read, "Tech insiders question Blackwell financial stability after failed next-gen acquisition." "How did they put this together so quickly?" Andre asked, scrolling through the article. It mentioned rumors of Blackwell Investments facing liquidity problems and suggested the next-gen deal had been a critical part of their strategy to shore up investor confidence. Kira shrugged. "Reed did mention something about a board meeting and stock options last night. Maybe they were in worse shape than they let on." Andre's phone buzzed again. The caller ID showed Lee, his assistant. "I should take this," he said, accepting the call. "Lee, good morning." "Morning. It's been morning for hours," Lee replied, his voice tense with excitement. "Where have you been?" "Your phone's been off and the office is going crazy." "Is it true? Did you really walk away from the Blackwells?" "Yes," Andre said simply. "We're not moving forward with them." There was a pause on the other end. "Wow. Okay. Well, you should know your inbox is overflowing. 3 other companies have already reached out wanting to talk acquisition, and the team is, well, they're waiting to hear from you." Andre glanced at Kira, who was still scrolling through news articles. "Tell everyone I'll be in the office in an hour." "And Lee, no calls from the Blackwells. Not to my office, not to my cell." After ending the call, Andre sat beside his daughter, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. "Looks like today's going to be interesting." "Dad," Kira said, her voice suddenly serious. "Do you regret it? Even a little?" Andre considered the question. "No," he said finally. "Some things are worth more than money. Respect is one of them." The next-gen offices were buzzing when Andre and Kira arrived. Employees clustered in small groups, conversations dying down as they walked past. Andre could feel the questions hanging in the air, the uncertainty. In the main conference room, his executive team was already waiting. Faces both concerned and curious turned toward him as he entered. "I'm guessing you've all heard by now," Andre began without preamble. "The deal with Blackwell is off." Dina, his chief financial officer, leaned forward. "Andre, I respect you tremendously, but we're talking about $750 million. The investors are already calling. They want to know what happened." Andre nodded. "I understand that. And I'll answer to the board and the investors. But first, I want all of you to know why I made this decision." For the next 10 minutes, he recounted the events at the Blackwell estate, the subtle condescension, the hallway conversation, the decision to walk away. He didn't embellish or dramatize. He didn't need to. The truth was powerful enough. When he finished, the room was quiet. Then Miguel, his chief technology officer, spoke up. "Good," he said firmly. "I wouldn't want to work for people like that anyway." Nods of agreement rippled around the table. Andre felt a wave of gratitude for the team he'd built. "So what now?" asked Dina, ever practical. "We spent 6 months on this deal. Now," Andre said, "we consider our options. Lee tells me we've already heard from 3 other companies this morning. And there's always the possibility of—" The conference room door swung open. Lee stood there looking slightly frantic. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said, "but you need to see this." He held up his tablet, showing a social media feed. "It's everywhere." Andre took the tablet. On the screen was a post from a tech industry insider with millions of followers. It contained an audio clip just 30 seconds long. Andre pressed play, and Preston Blackwell's voice filled the room. "These people do, right? Everything's about appearance. Andre Carter, the great black tech genius and his prodigy daughter. Makes for a nice story in Forbes, but we all know who's going to be running things once we sign those papers." Then Reed's voice. "I wonder how long Daddy's going to stick around after we write that check. I give it 6 months before he's living it up in some mansion, leaving us to fix whatever diversity hire mess he's created at that company." The room fell silent as the clip ended. Andre looked up to see his team's expressions shift from shock to outrage. "Who recorded this?" he asked quietly. Lee shook his head. "Unknown, but it's being shared everywhere. A Blackwell exposed is trending. And there's more. Someone leaked that Blackwell Investments is carrying massive debt. Apparently they needed your company's assets to secure a loan package." Andre's phone began ringing again. This time it was a number he didn't recognize. "Andre Carter," he answered, stepping away from the table. "Mr. Carter, this is Alicia Wong from Tech Future Investments." The woman's voice was crisp, professional. "I'll be direct. We've been following your company for some time, and in light of recent developments, we'd like to offer $900 million for acquisition, with guarantees that your executive team remains intact for a minimum of 3 years. Andre nearly dropped the phone. $900 million. Your company's intrinsic value hasn't changed overnight, Mr. Carter. If anything, your principled stand has increased it. We admire integrity at Tech Future." As Andre ended the call, promising to consider their offer, his phone immediately began ringing again. This time it was Thomas Blackwell. After a moment's hesitation, Andre answered. "Thomas. Andre, this has gone too far." Thomas's voice was strained, the smooth confidence replaced by barely controlled panic. "That recording, it was taken out of context. My sons were just being honest," Andre supplied. "Saying what they really thought? What context would make that acceptable, Thomas? The board is meeting in an hour. Our stock has dropped 20%. 20%, Andre? You have to make a statement, tell everyone this was just a minor disagreement." "I don't have to do anything," Andre replied calmly. "Your son said those things, not mine. I'll sue whoever recorded that conversation. It was private on my property. And that makes it okay to say those things? Being in private doesn't make bigotry more acceptable, Thomas. It just makes it more honest." There was a long pause before Thomas spoke again, his voice now dangerous. "You'll regret this, Andre. No one crosses the Blackwells." Andre looked around the conference room at his team. Diverse, brilliant, loyal people who'd helped build something remarkable. He looked at Kira, watching him with pride in her eyes. "Actually, Thomas, I think you've got that backwards. Goodbye." He hung up and turned back to his team. "So as I was saying, we have options. 900 million of them to start with." Dina whistled. 900? Who made that offer? Tech Future Investments, Andre smiled. And something tells me they won't be the last. Looks like integrity might be worth more than we thought. Outside the next-gen offices, reporters had begun to gather. The story was spreading like wildfire. The black CEO who walked away from millions on principle, the billionaire family's mask of civility shattered by a leaked recording, the financial house of cards that was Blackwell Investments beginning to collapse. But inside, Andre was already looking toward the future, a future that suddenly seemed brighter and more full of possibility than ever before. Sometimes the most valuable thing you could do in business wasn't making a deal. It was walking away from the wrong one. 6 months later, Andre stood at the window of his new office, 52 stories above the city. The view was different, but the feeling of pride as he looked out was familiar. On the streets below, people hurried about their day, unaware of how a single dinner had changed the course of multiple lives and companies. "Ready for this?" Kira asked, appearing at his side. She'd changed in the past 6 months, too. The confidence that had always been there now shone even brighter. She'd just finished her first semester of college, studying computer science while continuing to develop her encryption algorithm with NextGen's research team. "As ready as I'll ever be," Andre replied, straightening his tie. "How do I look?" "Like a man who made the right choice," she said with a smile. The right choice. Those words had echoed through Andre's life for the past 6 months, through meetings and negotiations, press conferences and private conversations. Walking away from the Blackwells had been just the beginning. The door to the office opened and Lee entered, now promoted to chief of staff. "They're ready for you in the main hall." "Full house," Andre nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's not keep them waiting." Together they took the elevator down to the first floor, where NextGen's new headquarters boasted a state-of-the-art auditorium. Today was the official launch of their latest security platform, but it represented so much more than just a new product. As they approached the auditorium doors, Andre could hear the buzz of hundreds of voices. Technology reporters, industry analysts, investors, and employees had all gathered for what had become one of the most anticipated tech launches of the year. "Mr. Carter," a young reporter called out, spotting him in the hallway. "Can we get a quick comment about Thomas Blackwell's resignation?" Andre paused. The news had broken just that morning. Thomas Blackwell stepping down as CEO of Blackwell Investments after nearly 40 years. The company's stock had never recovered from the dual blow of the failed NextGen deal and the leaked recording. Major clients had pulled their investments. The board had revolted. And now the final act in the drama was playing out on business channels worldwide. "I wish Mr. Blackwell well in his retirement," Andre said simply. "Today is about looking forward, not back." The reporter seemed disappointed with the diplomatic answer, but Andre had long since moved beyond anger or resentment. Success, as his father used to say, was the best revenge. Inside the auditorium, the lights dimmed as Andre took the stage. Applause washed over him, and he waited for it to subside before speaking. "6 months ago," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the space, "I faced a choice that many of you have heard about." Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. The story had become something of a business legend. "I could accept a deal that would have made me very wealthy, but would have compromised everything I believe in. Or I could walk away and trust that standing by my principles would lead somewhere better." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "Today, I'm here to tell you where that choice led." On the massive screen behind him, the NextGen logo faded into the new brand, Tech Fusion. The merger between NextGen and Tech Future Investments had created a company valued at over $4 billion. With Andre as CEO and his original executive team in key leadership positions. Our new security platform isn't just another product. It's a statement about who we are and what we value. It's built on Kira's groundbreaking encryption algorithm. He gestured to where she sat in the front row. Developed by a team that reflects the diversity of thought and experience that makes true innovation possible. For the next 30 minutes, Andre presented the new platform, highlighting its features and potential impact. The audience responded enthusiastically, particularly when he announced that a portion of all profits would go to a new foundation focused on supporting young people from underrepresented groups pursuing careers in technology. After the presentation, as people mingled during the reception, Andre found himself approached by a familiar face, Claire, Preston Blackwell's wife. She looked different now, less adorned with expensive accessories, more authentic somehow. "Andre," she said quietly, "I hope it's okay that I came. Of course, he replied, genuinely surprised to see her. How are you, Claire? She gave a small smile. Better, actually. Preston and I are, well, we're separated. After everything that happened, I did a lot of thinking about the life I was living, the people I was surrounding myself with. She took a breath. I wanted to apologize for that night, for not speaking up when I should have. Andre nodded, appreciating her honesty. That took courage to say. Your courage that night taught me something, she said. Watching you walk away from all that money because of how they treated you and Kira, it made me question a lot of things. She glanced around the bustling reception. Looks like it worked out well for you. It did, Andre agreed. And I hope things work out for you too, Claire. After she left, Andre made his way through the crowd, stopping for conversations with investors, journalists, and employees. Everyone wanted a piece of his time. A moment with the man whose principled stand had become a case study in business ethics courses across the country. Eventually, he found Kira deep in conversation with a group of young women, all computer science students from local universities who had been invited to the launch as part of the company's new mentorship initiative. And that's when I realized, Kira was saying as he approached, that knowing your worth isn't about what other people think of you. It's about not letting anyone else define what you're capable of. The students hung on her every word, and Andre felt a surge of pride. His daughter had turned what could have been a humiliating experience into a source of strength and wisdom that she now shared with others. Dad! Kira spotted him and waved him over. I was just telling them about our dinner with the Blackwells. A night to remember, Andre said with a smile, joining the group. Is it true that Preston Blackwell is working at a call center now? One of the students asked. Andre shook his head. I don't keep track of the Blackwells, but I will say this. Actions have consequences, both good and bad. The choices we make define our paths forward. Later that evening, after the crowds had gone and the excitement had quieted, Andre and Kira sat in his office, looking out at the city lights. I got an email from Mrs. Henderson today, Kira said, referring to her former high school computer science teacher. She's using our story to inspire her students, Andre smiled. How does that feel? Weird, but good. Kira twirled a pen between her fingers, thoughtful. You know, if Preston hadn't been such a jerk, none of this would have happened. We'd have taken the Blackwells' money. They'd have taken over NextGen, and we'd probably be on some beach somewhere counting our millions. Probably, Andre agreed. Sometimes our worst moments lead to our best opportunities. Do you ever wonder who recorded them? In the hallway that night? Andre had wondered about that many times. The identity of the person who had recorded the Blackwell brothers and leaked it to the press remained a mystery. Some speculated it was a server. Others thought it might have been one of the dinner guests who had become uncomfortable with the direction of the evening. Whoever it was changed a lot of lives that night, Andre said, including ours. For the better, Kira added. Andre nodded, thinking of all that had happened since that fateful dinner. The painful meeting with NextGen's board the day after, the flurry of new offers, the intense negotiations with Tech Future, the merger announcement that had made headlines, the old employees who had stayed and the new ones who had joined, drawn by the company's reputation for integrity. And through it all, the quiet certainty that he had made the right choice, not just for himself but for Kira, for his employees, and for all the young people who would come after him. Looking for proof that success didn't require compromising your dignity. You know what I think about sometimes? Andre said. That moment when Thomas Blackwell raised his glass for a toast, talking about me in the past tense like my part in the story was already over. And instead, it was just beginning. Kira finished for him. Outside, the city continued to pulse with life and possibility. Inside, a father and daughter sat in comfortable silence, looking toward a future they had claimed on their own terms. A future built not just on talent and hard work, but on the courage to know their own worth and the wisdom to walk away when others couldn't see it. Some victories couldn't be measured in dollars. Some wealth couldn't be counted in bank accounts. And some decisions, though costly in the moment, paid dividends that would last for generations to come.